Ahoy, you salty sailors. Time to raise anchor and set sail for your best scrawny life. Arr!
A shadnado occurs when there are more gizzard shad in the water than water in the water. Please observe carefully.
It's the time of year I like to call peak bait. The gizzard shad began spawning in June, and now it's mid-July, so there are millions of hatchling gizzard shad swarming in every direction. At the same time, heavy rain that fell further to the north and caused flooding has been making its way down the Des Moines River system. On the right, you'll see the Stratford gauge on the Des Moines River. Last year, when I stood ankle deep in the Des Moines River and pointed up at the Highway 30 bridge and said they closed that bridge in 2018, that seemed impossible. At that time, that reading was probably less than 4 feet, and it crested at 21 feet on the 28th of June. This year, the Army Corps of Engineers had been drawing down Lake Red Rock in anticipation of the floodwater coming down the Des Moines River. On the 28th of June, it began to rise. On the 13th of July, when this film was shot, it was over 755 feet above mean sea level. It's difficult to explain just how much water that actually is. But it went from this to this in the marshes of the far upper end of Lake Red Rock near the town of Swan, Iowa. Right around 755 feet is when water begins to flow in the opposite direction from Lake Red Rock into Roberts Creek Lake, which attracts a lot of white bass. But that will draw a big crowd of people. Going for gar, on the other hand, no one else ever does it, and it's just an absolutely crazy species of fish in a crazy venue like a flooded forest. It's little wonder if things get a little crazy. Of course, my overuse of the words little and crazy may in fact seem a little crazy. Of course, actually landing one of these fish in conditions like this is sort of a long odds proposition, but if nothing else, we get some quality time to show our pelican friends what real fishing is all about. And by real, I mean R-E-E-L. Look at this little bass. Look at the belly. Just stuffed full of those hatchling gizzard shad. Having the time of his life out here. So, I haven't seen you put one in the boat yet. Hey, you mind your own business. I'd like to see you grab one. You'll find out what it's like real quick. Crazy talking pelicans anyway. This is fighting a fish with one hand and fighting the wind with the other. I guess one of the strategic advantages of fishing in a bunch of flooded willow scrub is that it can be a windy day, but around the trees the surface of the water remains relatively calm, allowing you to see the fish. Of course, one of the disadvantages of, as there we see, one of the disadvantages of fishing in a bunch of flooded willow scrub is that all the spiders and insects and nasty critters that lived on the bottom, on the forest floor, have climbed up into the trees and will attempt to board your kayak and wreak all kinds of havoc as they do. So there is that to consider. Well, not a spectacular leap yet, but he's still putting up one tremendous fight. Anyway, finally we got a fish in the boat. But anyway, it's not necessarily something that everyone would enjoy. It's not for everyone. And I'm not necessarily posting these videos to encourage other people to do this. It may have that effect, but in all honesty, there are many hidden dangers when dealing with any kind of a flood scenario. And that's a risk assessment that you're going to have to make for yourself. Here we can see the needle-like teeth of the gar. This is why I don't need a steel leader, because you couldn't cut fishing line with a needle. They're not like the knife-edged teeth of a pike. And also, because they're needle-like, they're weaker and more brittle than, say, a pike's tooth, which is strongly set. A gar tooth can break off and embed into your skin and work its way deeply into your skin, where it will be painful and difficult to extract. You will want to establish some reasonable safety precautions for yourself.
A raccoon down here, looks like. Don't know why it's swimming over there. You're not gonna make it there, buddy.
Well, as a matter of fact, his goal was to get away from me, and he did accomplish that faster by swimming into the fast current than he would have just by swimming on his own power. So whether that was his intention or not, it's hard to say, but he actually did get away from me faster by doing that. I don't have a polarizing filter for this camera, and the sky glare makes it hard to see, but came upon a couple decent-sized gar here that I spooked them because I came upon them suddenly. But another large one here that I did see. Of course, the camera distorts the image and flattens it, so it's kind of hard to tell. The front of the kayak looks huge, and the fish looks far away. But this is probably a 3-footer or close to it. These fish are all about the sudden burst. They have great strength and speed in short bursts. Beyond that, they're relatively docile.
Broke the line. That was a big one.
And the line in that case is no delicate trout tippet, it's 15-pound fluorocarbon seagar. But although they can't bite through the line like a pike could, they can fray it over the course of a long fight. There's nowhere to go but up in this heavy brush, heavy flooded cover. Getting a few decent jumps out of this fish. They're amazing. Nowhere to go but up. These are my favorite kind of places. It literally, if you hook a fish in here, there's nowhere for it to go but up. But notice how close the fly gets to the fish before it strikes. Yes, they are an ambush predator, but they only strike at very close range, and they don't necessarily chase their prey. But back to the subject of plants, they help to settle out and clarify the muddy floodwater. So we have a visibility of 3 or 4 feet here. But later on, if the floodwater remains, the plants will die and form a foul-smelling mat on the surface of the water. Or if we get some sunny days, it could produce a potentially toxic cyanobacteria bloom. So the timing of when to be in these kinds of areas is important. If there's a bad smell in the water, that's usually an indication that your timing is wrong. But yeah, the timing, the beginning of the flood, when the plants are filtering the water and being helpful rather than forming a mat and being detrimental. The timing of it is quite important. If you get one in a small boat with you, you definitely want to keep that head pointed away from yourself. Gar can breathe air. Their swim bladder is equipped with veins that allow them to exchange gas with water or air. Even though they may be lying in a docile manner, they will continue to fight even out of the water. Their short burst nature will continue whether in the water or out of the water. But they're a lot of fun, and to keep it that way, I generally avoid nets. Untangling a gar from a net is not fun. And also, flies that are made of nylon rope and don't have a hook, that are intended to catch gar by entangling their teeth, are not really that fun either, because at some point they may work, but at some point you're going to need to untangle if you want your fly back. You're going to need to untangle it from the gar's mouth, which greatly increases your chances of being bitten. Although I lose a lot of fish using the treble hook style fly, it's not that big of a deal to lose a gar. Generally you'll still get a nice jump out of it, and that's really all that you're looking for. They're not a fish that can be eaten or anything like that, so most Iowans would easily recognize the common milkweed. The flowers are very fragrant. It produces a white latex wherever damaged, and always the aphids. There are 5 downward curved petals and 5 upward curved hood and horn structures. Between each of these is a stigmatic slit with a pollinia on either side. Everything comes in groups of 5, whereas insect legs come in groups of 6. So it's always an awkward fit, forcing the insects to put their legs in various places, picking up pollinia and depositing them. These flowers do not self-pollinate, although the plants can spread rhizomatically. Other insects acquire defensive toxins by feeding on the vegetative parts of the plant. From a previous video, we are already familiar with the purple milkweed. It's a bit more red in the flowers and also on the leaf veins, otherwise tall and very similar to the common milkweed. These are some of the insects that feed on the nectar. The swamp milkweed appears similar, although the foliage is quite different. That same intricate flower structure is there. The leaves are very different though, but the aphids are there and the milky latex. They do tend to grow nearer to water sources as well. The butterfly milkweed, although it is native to the eastern U.S., is seldom seen in the wild because it prefers open field habitat, which is all plowed up and planted with corn in Iowa. It's most often seen in butterfly gardens. In this small species, the leaves are very narrow and reduced, but the aphids, that intricate flower structures, and the pods are all there. So this is yet another milkweed, and that does it for this video. We'll see you next time.